Concert, if we may, to the time when you offered the tickets to Mr. Damiano before the concert actually took place. Okay. During that point in time when you offered the tickets to him and before he actually went to the concert, did you ever say to him or suggest to him that maybe he should bring some of his songs with him?
No, I did not.
Right. Do you deny saying that, or is it you just don't recall one way or the other?
I deny suggesting to Jim that he bring songs along with him. I did, however, concur with him when he asked me, do you think I should bring my songs with me? I said, sure, why not? What could it hurt?
This is the videotape deposition of Elliot Mintz in the matter of Damiano versus Sony Music and Bob Dylan.
Have you ever lied to Mr. Damiano?
Yes.
Someday, maybe you'll be able to tell the greatest story. Say the greatest line. Give the greatest performance. Find the greatest find.
Bob Dylan started out singing other people's songs, but as he says, there came a point where I had to write what I wanted to say because what I wanted to say nobody else was writing. So born in Hibbing, Minnesota, a town, he says, where you couldn't be a rebel, it was too cold. Bob moved to New York at age 19. By the time he was 23, Bob's voice, with its weight, its unique gravelly power, was redefining not just what music sounded like, but the message it carried and how it made people feel. Today, everybody from Bruce Springsteen to U2 owes Bob a debt of gratitude. There is not a bigger giant in the history of American music.
There are thousands of facts that support the fact that Bob Dylan is a plagiarist. It would be impossible to cite all the details in a 2-hour movie. One fact we do want to cite is the most important fact, and that is that it has been reported by Reuters that at the age of 16, Bob Dylan was already a plagiarist and knew the value of plagiarizing songs. Quoting Reuters, a poem written by a teenage Bob Dylan and up for auction at Christie's is actually a song written by the late Canadian country singer Hank Snow. Christie's announced on Tuesday the sale of the handwritten poem believed to have been written in 1957 when Dylan was 16 and away at Jewish camp. The words, with a few minor variations, match those of a song previously recorded by Snow, who died in 1999 at the age of 85. Christie's said in a statement, "Additional information has come to our attention about the handwritten poem submitted by Bob Dylan to his camp newspaper, written when he was 16, entitled Little Buddy. The words are in fact a revised version of lyrics of a Hank Snow song." In 1996, James Damiano posted the findings of his lawsuit against Bob Dylan on the internet and received over 8 million hits. It was at this time that Bob Dylan's musical works were called into question, and the origin of his songs started to be scrutinized by critics. His fans were astute in evaluating his duplicity concerning his material, and came to learn that 80% of the melodies and lyrical hooks of his songs were plagiarized. These songs included Blowin In The Wind, Like a Rolling Stone, The Times Are A-Changin', Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Read 'Em, and many more, including his Grammy-nominated hit, Dignity. Comments were being published, such as, quote, "I was watching a Pete Seeger documentary recently that featured his performance of I Dreamed I Saw Joe Hill Last Night, and I couldn't believe the similarity of the two lyrics. The phrasing and the cadence of these lines were exactly the same, except replacing St. Augustine for Joe Hill Last Night. I already knew Dylan writes this way. There are other more apparent examples of Dylan taking a phrase or sentence or song and reappropriating it for his own uses, such as rolling and tumbling off Modern Times. As this avalanche of evidence started to bury Dylan, he hid like a cornered weasel behind corrupt lawyer, judges, and journalists who covered up his massive affinity for plagiarism. The heat got so bad that he had to answer in some fashion. When asked what he thinks of people who charge him with plagiarizing songs, Dylan replied, "Wussies and pussies complain about that stuff."
Bob Dylan is sick and tired of his critics. In an interview with Rolling Stone, the 71-year-old folk rock icon, who has just released his 35th studio album, addressed charges of plagiarism, calling his critics wussies and pussies for claiming he was stealing from the works of others. In 2006, the New York Times accused Dylan of borrowing from a Civil War-era poet on his Modern Times album, and the Wall Street Journal claimed Dylan's 2001 record Love and Theft had very similar phrasing to a 1995 biography of a Japanese mobster. Dylan claims that in folk and jazz, quotation is a rich and enriching tradition, And he compared the Accusations to folk fans calling him Judas when he started to play the electric guitar on stage for the first time in the early 1960s. No doubt some will examine Dylan's latest album, Tempest, for its authenticity. But in his latest interview, Dylan has a few choice words for his harshest critics. They can rot in hell.
Also, Dylan recently, in a Los Angeles Times interview, admitted to plagiarism by definition. In a 2004 interview with Robert Hilburn of the Los Angeles Times, Bob Dylan stated, "Well, you have to understand that I'm not a melodist. My songs are either based on old Protestant hymns or Carter family songs. What happens is, I'll take a song and simply start playing it in my head. That's the way I meditate. I wrote Blowin In The Wind in 10 minutes. Just put words to an old spiritual, probably something I learned from Carter family records. The times they are a-changing is probably from an old Scottish folk song. I'll be playing Bob Nolan's Tumbleweeds, for instance, in my head constantly, while talking to a person or sitting around, whatever. People will think they are talking to me, and I'm talking back, but I'm not. I'm listening to the song in my head. At a certain point, some of the words will change, and I'll start writing a song." End quote, Bob Dylan.
This is the videotape deposition of Elliot Mintz in the matter of Damiano versus Sony Music and Bob Dylan.
Have you ever lied to Mr. Damiano?
Yes.
Yeah, we started to meet these people who'd really just been in newspapers and on film. You know, we actually were rubbing shoulders with them.
The times they are a-changing.
He was one of them.
He was our idol.
Bob was our hero.
Not an idol, but we just heard his record. As I said, we listened to his album and it really gave us a buzz, and we played it constantly over and over and over again.
I mean, I heard of Bob through John. He'd played the records to me, and it was just great.
I think it was freewheeling.
We love Bob Dylan.
Oh, what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my darling young one? Son, newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. So highway of dark.
Not many times, but on those occasions when he would ask me, could I pass on something to Mr. Dylan, I may have said to him, I'll try and pass it along, 4 words to that effect. If the issue was my fingerprint on a
Not
piece
yours. Somebody else's, sir, such as the defendant.
that never crossed my mind. There would be no way that the defendant's fingerprint could ever appear on a piece of paper that came out of my fax machine and went directly into my file cabinet.
And would Mr. Dylan, on occasion, meet with Mr. Mintz in person?
Well, yeah.
The criticism that you've received for more or less leaving folk music for folk rock hasn't seemed to bother you very much. Do you think you'll stick with folk rock, or are you going on into more writing?
I don't play folk rock.
What would you call your music?
I would call it, I like to think of it more in terms of vision music. It's mathematical music.
Would you say that the words were more important than the music?
The words are just as important as the music. There'd be no music without the words.
Which do you do first, ordinarily?
The words.
Do you think there will ever be a time when you will paint or sculpt?
Oh, yes. Oh, sure.
Do you think there will ever be a time when you'll be hung as a thief?
You weren't supposed to say that.
We are here at the office of Archer and Hayes, located at 500 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York. This is the case of James Damiano versus Sony Music Entertainment. This is the deposition of Muhammad Mahmoumi. At this time, counsel will identify themselves.
Stephen Kramer for the plaintiff.
Warren Snyder and Stephen Hayes for the defendants.
At this time, I'll have the court reporters swear in the witness.
Would you raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you swear in the testimony you're about to give that you will tell the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Would you please state your name and spell it?
Mohammed, M-O-H-A-M-E-D, Marhoumi, M-A-R-H-O-U-M-Y.
And you're here today because the plaintiff, James Damiano, has identified you as someone who has relevant information about the claims he has made in this case and the federal rules of litigation under which we're all operating here give each party the right to hear what the witnesses for the other side have to say under oath. And the proceeding here, even though it's in a lawyer's office, has the same seriousness and solemnity as if the proceedings were taking place in the United States court in front of the judge and jury in the United States courthouse. All of your testimony here is under oath, which, as you know, means you have to tell the truth here. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I said, I represent, along with my partner, Mr. Hayes, the defendants in this case, Sony Music Entertainment and Bob Dylan, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions. The questions are going to be taken down by the court reporter, and we're being videotaped as we sit here. Your answers then will be taken down by the court reporter word for word, and it's important that you answer each question verbally, that is, yes, no, or...
I did, however, concur with him when he asked me, do you think I should bring my songs with me? I said, sure, why not? What could it hurt?
For you today, a melodic analysis and comparison of the main melody of Steel Guitars by James Damiano to the main melody of Dignity by Bob Dylan. I define melody as the sequence or ordering of pitches in a single line of a musical composition. That is, melody is the ordering of pitches, which are often referred to as numbers, one being the number of the pitch center or tonic of the composition. And melody is distinct from rhythm, which specifies the timing and the duration of those notes. Analysis will cover the main melody of Steel Guitars and the main melody of Dignity, which I find to be strikingly similar. To begin, I'd like to illustrate the similarity of these two melodies by playing for you what I identify to be the common features themselves, a melodic arc of shared melodic features between these two compositions. This melodic arc is the pitches 1, followed by the pitches 5, 6, 1, and then after a gap, proceeding to the pitches 2, 3, 1. These pitches constitute what I call a melodic arc in that they bear with them something of the character of the melodic phrase, starting with one, ending with one, proceeding in certain patterns in between, particularly the 5-6-1 progression in between, and the ending with the 2-3-1. There's a kind of a melodic character to this arc, more than just a set of shared pitches. What I will be doing shortly is I'll be leading you through an analysis, allowing you to hear how steel guitars actually projects this exact same arc as Dignity.
Not many times, but on those occasions when he would ask me, could I pass on something to Mr. Dillon, I may have said to him, I'll try and pass it along, or words to that effect.
Accusations took place considerably before May of '95. Could you explain to us why you would have destroyed documents pertaining to him, given the fact he made it clear to you that he was consulting an attorney, and you know that consulting attorneys often leads into lawsuits? And
two reasons for not attaching much importance to that. One, the papers that I had destroyed were illegible papers as a result of the disappearing fax ink process.
I do recall receiving a fax from him, but I didn't have time to look at it.
Mistruths.
Yes.
Just to place that in context, I want you to know that, because I'm a truthful person,
do you recall ever giving Mr. Damiano your fax number?
Yes.
And when Mr. Dillon, how do you reach him?
I phone him.
At his home?
If he's in Los Angeles, yes. If he's on the road, I try and locate him that way.
Okay. Do you recall saying the following to Mr. Damiano, sir?
Is there a page reference that you're reading?
I have a 1/2 on it.
Is there a Bates number?
Bates number 144.
Okay, let me just put that in front of the witness.
Sure. You state at the top of the page, or at least it appears to that you state, my job here is to pass along information to Bob. Do you recall saying that, sir? Looking at the top. Okay. And Bob, of course, is Bob Dylan?
Yes.
And then you say, which I think I have. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. When you said that to Mr. Damiano, which I think I have, were you lying to him?
I was.
Have. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. When you said that to Mr. Damiano, which I think I have, were you lying to him?
I was misstating the truth.
Midway, you say, well, let's just put it in context. James Damiano says, you do remember about a year ago when I was at work, about a year and a half ago, when I was at work, and I asked you if you knew of anything. Remember, you said Bob Dylan had the songs in his suitcase and that he was going to read them. And the transcript states you said, no, I never said that. Then James Damiano says, you don't remember saying that? And then you say, No, I did not say that. I remember in our conversation, because I checked my notes, that you said you gave some songs to a bus driver who claims he put them on Bob's bus. Did you say those things?
Did I say those things to Mr. Damiano?
Yes.
Yes.
And when you say I checked my notes, were you lying?
I was not speaking the truth, correct.
Okay. Do you contend that he was delusional? Were you telling the jury that Mr. Damiano was delusional? Yes or no? But I want the answer to that question, please, if you would be so kind. Yes or no? Was Mr. Damiano delusional?
In my opinion, Mr. Damiano was, at the time of these conversations, delusional. Under the subject of mistruths spoken to your client, during the course of these telephone conversations, he would frequently ask me to pass along information, ask questions about Bob, or to Bob about him. And I, in fact, told him that I would, and that I did. In the course of these telephone conversations, he would frequently ask me to pass along information, ask questions about Bob, or to Bob about him. And I, in fact, told him that I would, and that I did.
Now I'm talking, okay, I'm sorry. That's my fault.
Those other questions.
That's my fault. My fault. With regard to this person from Sweden, have you shared those documents with a psychiatrist or a psychologist?
No.
So would it be fair to state that just like the only person who you know, at least, other than counsel, who's made his opinion on the record abundantly clear, that believes Mr. Damiano is delusional, is you? In other words, do you know of anybody else who believes Mr. Damiano is delusional?
I've not discussed Mr. Damiano with anybody.
So would the answer be no?
No.
Okay. And would your answer be the same with regard to the gentleman from Sweden? Have you showed, I'll ask you the same series of questions, have you shown those documents to any psychiatrist or psychologist?
No.
Okay. And is there anyone else that you know of that shares your opinion that that person is delusional?
I haven't shown it to anybody else.
So the answer be no?
Correct.
So that we're clear, the only person in the world that we know of for sure that believes that the person who made the accusations against Mr. Dillon from Sweden, that he's delusional, is you. Correct?
The only one we know of for sure. We don't know if there are other people, friends of his, who think
the
he's
only
delusional.
one, right, we don't. We know. The only one we know for sure that believes he's delusional is you.
Yes.
And same with Mr. Damiano?
Yes.
Okay, and it's been established you have absolutely no training whatsoever in psychology or anything like that, correct?
Well, under the subject anything like that, I would think that 16 years of analyzing these kinds of letters from these kinds of people would qualify me to render some evaluation under that category.
Do you have any formal training, sir?
In psychiatry? No.
Psychology?
No.
Mental health?
No, sir.
Have you taken any seminars in psychology, psychiatry, or mental health? Have you written any books about it?
No, I have not.
Okay, have you written any books about delusional people?
I've never written a book.
Have you written any articles about delusional people?
No.
And without naming this person in Sweden, okay, sir.
The time is 6:23 p.m. and we're back on the record.
Okay, from page 149, would you quote the words that you would like to tell the jury, in your view, revealed Mr. Damiano as being delusional?
Must I confine that to delusional, or may I suggest delusions of grandeur, or any kind of extension of the word delusional?
Well, let's take it one at a time. Let's first talk about delusional. Or let's do it this way. Okay. Anything that in your mind you would like to tell the jury reveals to you that Mr. Damiano is suffering from some sort of delusion.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. The following would support that hypothesis in my mind. I'm quoting, I mean, these people befriended me for 11 years. Those are the quotes of somebody who I would classify as being in some way hampered, confused, disturbed, suffering from delusions of grandeur, deluding himself, confused in some way. It doesn't bring me joy to say it. I'm not saying it in an accusatory manner or in a degrading manner. I'm not trying to hurt Mr. Damiano's feelings. Just based on reading hundreds and hundreds of these kinds of letters, those are the feelings that I get from the words that I see before me.
When Mr. Damiano said that people befriended me for 11 years, did you talk to anyone at CBS to see if that was the case? And if so, whom?
I believe I had one telephone conversation with that individual that Damiano asked me to contact.
Mr. Tiller?
Mr. Tiller, okay. Yes.
And did he refer to Mr. Damiano as a friend of his? Yes or no?
I have very little recollection of my conversation with Mr. Tiller. I can't recall.
I'm sorry. Were you aware that Mr. Tiller, on at least one occasion, you understand Mr. Tiller to have been, I think, up to this day, to be an executive of CBS?
No, I do not.
Do you understand Mr. Tiller to be an employee of CBS?
I was told he was an employee of CBS. Okay. I never knew it.
I'm just going to object because I believe you're mischaracterizing.
What is this objection?
I believe you're mischaracterizing his testimony.
I was promoted to Associate Director of Marketing Services.
Let's go back to the Jones Beach concert, if we may, to the time when you offered the tickets to Mr. Damiano before the concert actually took place. Okay. During that point in time when you offered the tickets to him and before he actually went to the concert, did you ever say to him or suggest to him that maybe he should bring some of his songs with him?
No, I did not.
Do you deny saying that, or is it you just don't recall one way or the other?
I deny suggesting to Jim that he bring songs along with him. I did, however, concur with him when he asked me, do you think I should bring my songs with me? I said, sure, why not? What could it hurt?
Where did this interview take place between yourself and Mr. Dillon?
It was over dinner at a restaurant called Il Cielo here in Beverly Hills.
And do you recall when it took place?
August 5th, 1988, in the evening, sometime around 7, 8 o'clock, something like that.
Thank you. And was anyone else present at the table with you?
Yes, Elliot Mintz, who was at the time Bob Dylan's publicist. Said before it sounded like the tour had maybe kept him from writing as much as he had in the past.
James Damiano versus Sony Music Entertainment Incorporated and Bob Dylan. And the case number is 95-4795. We're here at the offices of Parcher and Hayes, located at 500 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York. And this is a deposition of Tony Tiller. This time counsel will identify themselves.
Stephen Kramer for the plaintiff.
Orange Snyder and Ruth Lott for Sony Music Entertainment, Inc. and Bob Dylan.
At this time, I have the court reporter swearing the witness.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear in the testimony you're about to give that you will tell the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Tiller, good morning. You are employed by whom, sir?
Sony Music.
And how long have you been employed by Sony Music?
For 9 years on staff, 10 years if you count, approximately a year and 2 months as temp/per diem. I was promoted to Associate Director of Marketing Services.
Did you ever have in your office any compilations of any sort of Mr. Damiano's songs that you kept on your bookshelf?
When you say compilation, what?
A folder, binder, book, tablet.
Printed
material, anything.
Printed material, yes.
Okay, and draw, if you would, so I can picture it, and the jury can picture it, a verbal picture of your office, and then after you do that, where the material rested.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, so the record's clear. Are we talking about, because you may have had more than one office over the course of the years, so you might want to...
Sure, if you had more than one office, take me through it.
Okay, when I first started as a temp, I moved from office to office to cover for people who were on vacation.
Okay, just to speed it up a touch, perhaps. If you would, Mr. Tiller, limit yourself to the offices in which these materials were ever located.
Okay, my first office, I had, the door would be, say, in that corner. Over here, I had 2 file cabinets, a table, a small table to my left attached to my desk, an art desk in that corner, a bookcase right next to that, and next to that a file cabinet.
Okay, thank you.
The book that Jim had given me would be on that bookcase.
To your right?
To my right.
Okay. And what year did you receive that book initially?
I don't recall.
Okay, and what did it have in it?
It had a bunch of songs, or a bunch of, I guess, well, he called them songs, so I called them songs, but they were words written in verse form.
Was it in a binder, a folder?
It was in a binder.
Like a 3-ring binder?
3-ring binder.
And where is that today?
I do not know.
When was the last time you saw it?
When we were in the CBS building at 52 West 52nd Street.
And you're telling us and the jury you don't know what happened to those materials of songs or words?
No, I do not.
Just disappeared?
Well, when we moved from that building approximately 4 or 5 years ago, as I explained to Jim, we were to pack our own desks. We were pressed to work until the day we moved, pretty much. And the movers came in and packed everything else. There were things that were left behind.
And so could you pinpoint, Mr. Tiller, what year Mr. Damiano's book of songs or words disappeared from your office?
You did not say disappeared. You're mischaracterizing his testimony. You did not say they disappeared.
So
Well, if you mischaracterize the testimony...
Oh, that's an exception to our stipulation? So that means during Mr. Mintz's deposition, every time you... Did Mr. Damiano's songs, Mr. Tiller, disappear?
Could I have you rephrase that?
Sure. What happened to his songs that had been on your shelf for how long?
1.5, possibly 2 years.
Okay. The songs or that binder, without that binder disappeared, did it not?
They were left in the building when we moved.
And did you ever go back to retrieve it or to ask where it was?
No, I did not. There were...
And is that building still owned by CBS?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that's CBS's headquarters, yes?
Yeah.
And all we know now, and all the jury knows now, is that you don't have it, correct?
That is correct.
And Sony does not have it, to your knowledge.
Sony does not have it.
Right. And if we went to your office today, where your office used to be on 52nd Street, did that?
No, I did not.
And all we know now, and all the jury knows now, is that you don't have it, correct?
That is correct.
And Sony does not have it, to your knowledge.
Sony does not have it.
Right. And if we went to your office today, where your office used to be on 52nd Street, at CBS's headquarters, did you ever tell Mr. Damiano that his materials had been lost, or left behind, or disappeared?
Yes, I did.
What did he say?
I can't recall exactly what he said. But I did tell him I was sorry.
Counsel, this is the second witness in a row, literally, who received materials from the plaintiff comprising one or more of his songs, where the materials have disappeared, whether you want to use the word disappeared, lost, destroyed, evaporated, whatever phrase you want to use. And I want the record to note that this is the second witness in a row. Mr. Mintz testified that he destroyed Mr. Damiano's fax materials. And no, not only did he destroy them, he went further. He said he shredded them.
Mm-hmm.
And now Mr. Tiller is saying that the binder of materials of songs that Mr. Tiller received got lost, disappeared, don't exist. And
I would say a couple of weeks before the meeting with Anthony.
And he approached you, is that correct?
Yeah.
And what did he tell you about what he hoped would happen as a result of your investment?
Well, basically, there was that one song that he really liked a lot, which is My Cousin Joanne, and we just believed that would be a big hit. That if somebody like Bob Dylan would sing that song, that would be like a big hit. And that was, that's what got me interested.
And then your wife told you that, yes, in fact, Bob Dylan is a big superstar.
Yes.
Gentlemen, could you possibly speak one at a time?
Okay.
So we don't have to do this twice.
So in effect, Mr. Damiano asked you to invest $10,000 in his recording project.
Yes.
If you knew right now that Mr. Damiano had a $200,000 CD and was living high in the hog, you'd call him up and you'd say,
from what I remember,
what about my $10,000? Correct?
If he didn't give it to me. But from what I remember about Jim, if he has the money, he will give it to me.
And in fact, the $10,000 investment, which you made in 1987, if you compound interest and do all, and when he told you that nothing was being done, is it fair to say that you became, at times, somewhat annoyed at the situation?
Yeah, I wasn't happy about it.
And what, if anything, did you say to Mr. Damiano about the failure of him to turn that investment into any profit for you?
I didn't make a case of it. All I remember is just talking to Jim Damiano about it. Just stay with it. Just don't give up. Keep trying. That's things of that nature, In my mind, you gotta understand, I didn't see Jim doing anything wrong. I think he produced a good record. I liked it. My wife liked it. It was a good music. I still got a few tapes. I know I gave some to my friends, and everybody liked it. We did nothing wrong as far as that. The bad part of it is that I'm the one that spent the money on it, and I didn't get anything back. But I was convinced that this was a good decision, and at the same time, that the tape came out very good. So he didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at myself.
Well, sir, you said you didn't believe him and his claims about Bob Dylan, listening to his music when you were in the car dealership before your meeting with Tony Tiller. Yes. That was your testimony, correct?
Yes.
After the meeting, and after it became clear that your $10,000 was going down the drain, isn't it fair to say that your feelings of disbelief began to reemerge?
Not after the meeting, after the tape. After 2-3 weeks after the tape was done. After the meeting, I was very excited.
We're going to get to the meeting in a minute and your excitement. I'm now taking you after this meeting. There came a time when it was clear that your $10,000 investment was going down the drain.
That sunk in.
You got your American Express Platinum bill.
Mm-hmm.
Wham! $10,000.
You have to pay it all at once.
So every month you're reminded about this $10,000 investment that had gone down the drain. And my question to you, sir, is...
Was that a question, or was that just a color commentary about every month?
Is that correct?
Well, not me, maybe my wife. She pays the bills, but I just put it out of my mind. But yes, I could see what he's saying, though, but it wasn't me personally. I don't see...
You were aware, sir, month to month, that you had to pay the interest or whatever it is on the $10,000?
Yes, I was.
And my question to you, sir, is that after those 3 weeks, and after you started paying monthly the $10,000, your feelings of disbelief about Mr. Damiano's claims of having some connection to Bob Dylan began to resurface.
Are you asking him that? Or
yeah, I'm asking him.
Okay, well, if you want an answer for that, I'll give you an answer. I don't think that Jim was the one that give me that disbelief. It was Anthony. I think Jim was just maybe lied to like I was. That's how I perceived it. I took him for a victim just as much as myself. Okay, if there was no connections to Mr. Dylan, it wasn't because of what he said to me. It was because of what Anthony said to me.
Okay, I understand that, and we'll get to that in a minute.
I'm not asking about mad now. I'm asking
I'm not
you're
asking
getting
about,
at, well,
not asking
man.
about, not asking, no, I'm not asking about man now. I'm asking about not believing, not because Mr. Damiano was lying to you or not lying to you, but not believing the claim that Mr. Damiano had some connection to Bob Dylan. My question to you, sir, is whether after those 3 weeks, those feelings of disbelief resurfaced.
Yes, it did resurface. And I also had second thoughts about maybe that just the whole thing was a scam. Okay, or the whole thing was a scam, or also that this music just got stolen from us. It basically just went the way they wanted to go. We paid the money and something else will happen to it. I mean, a million things will go through your head to justify it. But at the time, yes, I was upset. And the bottom line is we lost track of each other after that for a few years, and I just forgot about it.
My specific question is whether after those 3 weeks you again disbelieved. Let me rephrase it. After those 3 weeks, you again believed that Mr. Damiano really didn't have any way to get his music to Bob Dylan.
No, I never disbelieved that because I know what I heard. My wife disbelieved that. My wife told me that the whole thing was a lie. I never disbelieved that part. I believed that this music was going to Bob Dylan. I know I believe that in my heart, and I still believe it to now. Now, maybe.
Brian, can we take a half a second?
That I thought about. But also I believed, after a while that Jim, there's no possible way that Jim could have been part of that scam because we stayed, he stayed working for me for a while after that, and I learned more about what he was going through, and it wasn't really his fault, it was my fault.
When you said a scam, what was the specific scam that you thought might have been a possibility?
Yeah.
What kind of scam was it?
That scam would be something like him and Anthony got together and made me believe that could have been a scam, but now I know better. Well, because of my relationship afterwards.
Sir, so the scam that you thought might be a possibility is that Mr. Damiano wanting your 10 grand and got together with Mr. Tiller to lie to you about alleged connections with Bob Dylan to get you to invest the $10,000. Is that the scam that...
It would have been a good scam if it was done that way, but he didn't want the money. I didn't pay them any money. The money was paid to the record company. He wanted to record a record, and that's, that's all he wanted is his song produced.
The record company... You didn't pay any money to Sony or CBS. The money you paid went to the recording studio.
To the recording studio.
My question to you, sir, is one of the things that crossed your mind 3 or 4 weeks after this meeting was that in order to get you to pay the 10 grand, Mr. Tiller and Mr. Damiano may have lied to you about their alleged connections with Bob Dylan to get you to pay the 10 grand. Is that the scam that crossed your mind?
That's one of the thoughts that came to my mind to justify what I did to myself, but I know it's not true.
Well, you know it's not true. How do you know it's not true?
I know it's not true because of my continuous relationship with Jim.
Well, sir, you have no idea, do you, as you sit here today, whether in fact Mr. Tiller has any contact or ever had any contact whatsoever with Mr. Dylan. Is that correct?
I don't know for sure. No.
You have no way of knowing that one way or another. Is that correct?
No.
Other than the fact that Tiller told him?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Based on what he told me, he does. Now, I don't know if he really does or not, but based on
whatsoever with Mr. Dylan. Is that correct?
I don't know for sure. No.
You have no way of knowing that one way or another. Is that correct?
No.
Other than the fact that Tiller told him?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Based on what he told me, he does. Now, I don't know if he really does or not, but based on his words, he does.
But you know that the record went nowhere.
I don't know that.